Hi everyone, Stepan here, playing Smoking Ace 07, who's joined 17 hours ago. That's a very fresh account. Okay, let's see. So in the last 5 games, I have 4 wins and a draw. Let's continue the good streak of not losing. That's my primary goal. Although I would love to win because my opponent's 150 points lower rated. I'm of course playing the semi-Averbach because I want to play aggressively. Let's see what they do. Smoking Ace. How many games has Smoking Ace played in the last 17 hours? 7 games. And their rating is 2141. That means that they haven't won all their games. Yeah, otherwise, let's say you start with what, 1500? So the first win 1700, second win 18 or 19. Yeah, they definitely haven't won all 7 games. And being confused with bishop e2 is normal in my experience. In the King's Indian, when you play the semi-Averbach, people get confused for 2 reasons. Reason number 1, you're not playing knight f3. Reason number 2, it's very hard to play f5. And when you do, you don't achieve the usual counterplay. So if black isn't familiar with a5, a4, a3, the queenside play, and different ways of disrupting the semi-Averbach, then you could get in a quick win. And I usually score pretty well with this. Now, the main move, of course, is castles. Although I'm guessing black could deviate with e5 or knight d7, but I see no reason for that. So the line goes castles, bishop e3, e5, d5, and then either a5, knight a6, or knight d7. Yeah, let's not get into the possibilities because they are numerous before my opponent decides what to do. Very strange for a King's Indian player to be delaying castling for 1.5 minutes, especially in a rapid game. But we welcome that because we want to continue the good streak of not losing, and if my opponent has less time, then I have a better chance. By the way, the idea behind bishop e2 is to play bishop e3 without allowing knight g4. Not that knight g4 is such a big deal, but you want to keep your g-pawn free, and you want to control the g4 square because you want to play g4. So it's not just about preventing knight g4, it's about playing g4. And you want the g4 square defended twice. This is already getting strange. Why think for 2 minutes in the King's Indian on move 5? Because if black castles here, one of the main moves is still knight f3. So there's really no... Maybe if you don't know the semi-Averbach, you start thinking after 6 bishop e3, probably. You don't start thinking yet. Now black could go e5 or c5 here. If c5, I can ignore it, I can take, I can play d5. Taking isn't a serious option though. I wouldn't do that because it weakens everything. Let's just hope the game doesn't end with me talking about random things and my opponent not making a move. While we're at the subject of random things, so I'll be playing a tournament in December, starting December 5th. So in 19 days, I'll have the first game. And it will be the first 60 plus 30 tournament I play. It's the Dubrovnik Advent Open. If you guys want to play, Dubrovnik is wonderful. It's one of the most beautiful Croatian towns and highly touristic. So if you do come, be prepared for hordes of tourists disembarking cruisers and swarming around the town like insects. Although people from Croatia are used to that, and well, it's probably the primary source of income for most people who, at least who live on the coast. So, yeah, we're not. I'm slightly annoyed when I cannot walk normally because of how many people there are. But okay. In any case, if you do decide to come to Dubrovnik, be prepared for that. Also, be prepared that it's extremely expensive. Let's say you come from Paris or London, then it's about the same. Probably more expensive than Paris. But it's definitely more expensive than any regular city in Europe, like Milan or, I don't know, Lyon or München or Köln, I don't know. I've never been to Norway, so maybe Norway is a bit more expensive, but I don't know. Okay, so it's been 5 minutes and my opponent hasn't made the move. I don't know if it's some sort of lag on my end, but I hope not. What else? I don't know. I mean, I may have to edit parts of this out. I don't know. So my training, let's talk about that. There were numerous comments asking me about my training methods and about psychological issues during play. So when I struggle with something during a game, oh, okay, my opponent played a move. I'll comment on it, but it's not easy to solve, in my opinion. Like, for example, me getting annoyed with my opponent playing instantly, that's something I just have to deal with. It's not really a serious issue. So yeah, I'm aware of all those things, and if you're trying to help, thank you, but I have to deal with those myself. The same goes for me getting into time trouble, analyzing unnecessary positions for too long, or blundering. I am aware of all of those things. So now, once again, black has a couple of options. Knight d7 is the main move, a5 is playable, knight a6 is playable. These two moves have the same idea, getting the knight to c5. So if, for example, knight d7, g4, knight c5, I have to throw in f3 to defend my e4 pawn before continuing the attack. So I'm up 7 minutes on the clock. At least I'm not gonna be the first one to get into time trouble. I'm not saying I won't get into time trouble at all, but yeah, we will see. If my opponent continues playing at this pace, we will reach move 9 and they will flag. I don't know. I mean, there are 3 normal moves here. Okay, knight d7, g4, knight c5, f3. Now there really are very few alternatives to knight c5. I don't really know what to suggest. c6 loses. Yeah, okay, so they play knight c5. And now we're in a normal position where they should have been with 15 minutes on the clock. Instead, they have 8. So, all right. a5 is the main move now, against which I like to play b3. I have a nice win with b3. That's a move that has almost never been played in master games, but I think it's very annoying for black to have to face prophylaxis on both sides of the board, because now f5 obviously isn't even playable. Even if it was, it wouldn't do much. And on a5, white wants to go a4, a3, and when you play b3, well, a4 cannot be played because of b4. Or I can just win the pawn, but I wouldn't. I'd play b4. There are 2 main goals of the semi-Averbach against the King's Indian. Goal number 1, prevent typical play from black. Goal number 2, attack on the king side. And I've had this position in these training games probably 20 times by now. You must have seen it a bunch of times if you watch my training games. They get highly complex. I have bad bishop on e2, but usually they are more comfortable for black. My opponent says, "Sorry mate, my lady keeps yelling." Understandable. At me. Okay. My opponent says, sorry mate, my lady keeps yelling at me. I'll just say no worries. No worries. Let me know if you'd like me to add some clock time. If he says yes, I'll add some clock time. Because the poor guy. Imagine playing a game and your lady's yelling at you. I wonder what he did. Okay, I'll play b3 because I like b3. Poor guy. Here I am thinking he was considering his options. Okay, now we have a game. Now I can go g5 or h3. I like h3 because I want to keep a pawn on g4 without weakening e4. And now I can continue my development with queen d2, bishop f1, knight e2. And now that h3 has been played, there really is very little counterplay for black. And on c6, I can even consider taking and weakening the d pawn. Poor guy. Okay, my opponent wants to go c6. So I want to go queen d2 followed by rook d1. Okay, queen d2. Let's connect our pieces. So on queen d2, a4, there's b4, and it's all good. And if my opponent plays c6, then I take, they take with the bishop. I go rook d1, they have to go knight e8. Then I can consider bishop g5, and on f6, g6 has been weakened. Do I go rook d1 or do I take? Because if my opponent takes, then I take with the knight. If knight takes, then queen takes, and on bishop c6 I take on d6. So if I go rook d1, I'm threatening... Wait, can I go bishop c5 first? No, rook d1 first. Rook d1 first. Now that my opponent has weakened d6, I'm gonna take with the knight. And I'm threatening knight f6 followed by queen d6. If bishop c6, I do the same thing. And if knight d5, I play queen d5, and I'm on the d pawn, which is defenseless. So this seems like a pretty good position to me. Pretty good. Also, if my opponent does nothing, I take on c5, take on f6, and win the bishop on d7. Unless there's knight takes e4. Is there knight e4? No. Because my bishop defends f2. So knight e4, f e4, knight e4, queen d3, let's say. Ooh, there's knight e4. It works. Oof. Knight e4 works? Because there's queen h4, king f1, knight g3 check. Okay, it will be 2 knights for a rook and a pawn, and 2 pawns. Oof. Wow, okay, knight e4 could work. Knight e4, f e4, knight e4. Where do I even put my queen? Queen c1, let's say, to give myself the option to go knight g5. Queen h4 check, king f1. Knight g3 check. King g2. Knight h1. I don't have bishop g5. Yeah, okay, okay, he played it. I mean, I have to take. Knight g4, knight e4, f e4, knight e4, queen c1, queen h4, king f1, knight g3, king g2, knight h1, king h1, hg4. Can I go bishop g5 there? Probably. I mean, yeah, I'm gonna have to take. I don't have another option. So queen c1, queen h4, king f1, knight g3, king g2. I have to do this. I see no alternative. And I have to take, because on bishop g5 there's queen g3. Is there bishop g5 now? Bishop g5. Is bishop g5 even useful? So it's 3 pawns and the rook for 2 knights. My god. No, bishop g5, there's queen f2. But then there is queen e3. Why did I miss knight e4? So bishop g5, let's say queen h5. King g2. Or, sorry, king h2. I think I have to go bishop g5. And I have to go for a queen trade, because f5 is coming. I'm gonna win the h-pawn, but it's still gonna be a whole bunch of pawns for the exchange. For the sacrifice. Why did I only see knight e4 after I made my move? Actually, on queen f2, instead of queen e3, I may have rook f1, and on queen d4, knight f6 check. Bishop f6, threatening queen h6 with mate. But then there is queen e4 check, king h2, and luckily there's no e4, bishop e5. Okay, now my opponent probably wants to go f6. I'm very afraid of f5, so I'm thinking about bishop e7 followed by bishop takes d6. In the meantime, what does my opponent do? Well, for the moment the g-pawn is pinned, so that's not gonna move. I can also play knight b6, winning an exchange back. But then there is bishop c6, and that's annoying, so I cannot go knight b6. So bishop e7. Maybe there is bishop h6. But then I can go queen c3. Maybe. Let's go bishop e7. Knight b6 doesn't work because of bishop c6 check. I'm expecting bishop h6. But that will undefend the e-pawn. So on bishop h6, queen c3, let's say rook d8. Oh no, bishop h6, I have knight f6, stupid. No, bishop h6 just fails to knight f6. Yeah, okay. I don't know what my opponent does. Probably rook e8. I mean, you're not gonna... Because on bishop f8 you cannot even recapture with the bishop. Yeah. Okay, so let's take. I feel like taking is correct. Bishop h6 still doesn't work. Okay. Not an easy position at all. I don't know what to suggest. He says good game. I mean, it was a much better game by him because I missed knight e4. I don't know. We will analyze this. So I'll tell you when I was out of book. So b3 I still know, and h5 is familiar. And then I was unfamiliar with bishop d7. So let's turn on the engine here. Okay, queen d2. What? My opponent's winning in the final position. Why did I? Okay, queen d2, c6. I should have taken, but rook d1 is only a slight advantage. Takes. Yeah, knight e4 worked immediately. And queen c1 is losing. I wanted to keep the option to play bishop g5. Why is queen c1 losing? Yeah, f5 immediately. Knight g3 is unnecessary. f5. Because if I go king g2 now, on f5 I was going to go g5. I couldn't see... Yeah, and then f4. My god. And if I lose the bishop, mate's hanging. Yeah, knight g3, good for white. Good for white. Bishop g5. Wait, I should have gone bishop g5 immediately? No, I did go bishop. What? Okay, queen h5. Bishop e7 is bad. What's the point of knight e7? I just take on d6? Okay, knight e7 covers bishop c6. Black is -1. Okay, let's see why. Let's see why. I don't know what I would have played, but it wouldn't have been c5. Seems like a weird move. Let's say... Well, okay, queen c2 seems reasonable. I don't know if I would have found it, but the idea is to play knight e7 and take on g6 if f4 is played. So if f4, knight e7. Okay, and the engine just gives up the exchange and says it's great for black. Wow. Okay, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I did not feel comfortable and I was expecting to lose after knight e4. Luckily, my opponent was in time trouble. Still, it would have been an interesting game. I made one blunder, my opponent made one blunder. I only got 3 points. That's hardly seems fair. Okay, thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye-bye.